Hello and welcome to this video where today I'm going to be giving a beginner's guide to working with a new deck. So this video is going to be geared towards anybody who is new to tarot or oracle cards, who's looking to work with a new deck, or maybe you've had a deck for a while and you've never opened it and you're wanting to get started with it. This is going to be a video which is going to go over 4 quick things here. I have my notes. Just about basically building your practice for reading. Now, I am going to speak mostly just about the workings of the card specifically, and not really about kind of the intentions or the energetic space that comes along with divination. My personal approach is more of a spiritual divination that centers around service to others and using tarot as a tool for shadow work mostly. That's my personal resonance and opinion. If you're interested in spiritual divination, if that sounds like something that sparks your curiosity, I've done a whole intro to it video. You can check that out after. I also did a bit of a 2-part card care sort of video, an intro that is about approaching your decks and maintaining your practice in a spiritually aligned way to promote positivity and clarity. So if that kind of stuff interests you, definitely check those videos out. For this purpose, I'm mostly just going to be going over kind of the logistics and the practice points that come in with having a new deck. So the 4 things that I really want to get out here in this video are going to be learning how to speak to your cards, so learning their language and learning to speak their language. Number 2 is going to be about general meanings and just understanding the basic flow of typical tarot. That's where I'm going to mostly just talk about tarot, because the oracle cards, if you're unfamiliar, there are 2 different types of structurings to divination decks, and one follows a template and is more well known, which is traditional tarot. And then we have our oracle or angel decks, which are way more loose and typically do not follow that template structure that tarot does. So for part 2 is mostly geared towards tarot, and that will be just talking about the suits, their general meanings, the major and minor arcana. And number 3 is going to be about spreads, whether you choose to work with spreads or not, what they look like and what that means. And then the last part, I kind of want to pull it all together about using the language and the communication that you're going to build with your decks to sense and create good readings, and how you can speak with your deck before readings for others or even for yourself to promote the best space using your knowledge and what type of spreads and all of the kind of thinking things that come into making readings. So yeah, this is kind of like just a general beginner's guide to divination if you're new. So if you have yourself a new deck, or you have a deck that you haven't opened yet or worked with a lot, maybe you've looked through it but you haven't really done a lot of readings with it. Number 1, learning how to speak with your cards and hearing your deck is probably, in my opinion, one of the crucial things you do first. Now, if you have had a deck for a long time, you can certainly do this, and it's just that it's a little more difficult because you have preconceived opinions already and these subjective relationships with certain cards in your deck already, probably, or maybe the entire deck. And so coming at it with a new eye can be difficult, but I mean, I won't deter you from attempting it. And it can be a really nice practice also, I've noticed with my decks, because both of Especially my Oracle deck. I've had that deck for 20 years or longer now. So coming at things with a new eye can be difficult and challenging, but it can be worth it, and you can learn new things if you can. So I would never, don't hesitate to try this with a deck you've had for a while. But first thing I would say is when you get that new deck, open it up and go through it. Look through every single card and spend time trying to see the card for what it is, right? Look at the picture with a clean slate if you can, and try to see what new nuances you might see inside that picture. It's another. It is sort of a spiritual practice, but I do feel that it's super crucial to first kind of set up your mental space before you try to do this. So whether that's music or incense or meditating or candles, or singing bowls, tuning forks, all of these little things, whatever it is to get you in your zone to where you feel some clarity, some space and quietness to be a witness, is the best time to come and try to do this new working, to learn the language and set up a space of communication between you and your cards. Because that's really what I guess we're trying to do when we're learning the language, is creating this open space that allows the new language to flourish in, to be heard in, explored in. So yeah, going through each card and getting a sense of them, it can help to write down little sparks of ideas, maybe make a note for every card or doodle, if that's your style. Also, things that can be helpful are things like keywords or little key visions that come with each card, right? And make your own flashcards if that's your thing, and go through those to try to help you remember. It can also be very helpful at first to do basic readings, whatever kind of style of spread that you're most comfortable with, is helpful to gauge kind of what kind of answers that you get from your new deck. If you're not a seasoned reader, then maybe that kind of advice isn't as helpful. But if you have been reading and you've had other decks and this is a new deck you're bringing in, that is really fun to do, is take like your most common basic spread. My personal favorite is just a generic 5-card spread. Some people like a 3-card, or some people just go with the flow and they pull as many that feels good to them. It's totally subjective. But wherever you're kind of comfortable with as a beginning gauger, I would say when you're also in your most mellow mood, your most meditative, open mood, go and do kind of a general reading and see what kind of answers that you get back. And you can compare them to other decks that you get answers back, and see, are they funny? Are they quirky? Are they brutally honest? Are they deceptive? Are they loving and caring? We see all these different personalities in decks, and it can be a really fun process at the first beginning to do that and see, excuse me, and see what kind of answers they give to you. If you're a new reader, then try a past, present, future 3-card basic and see what kind of answers that they're giving you. Also, really try to go at it at a time when you're not feeling a lot of emotions, when you don't have disruptions happening or pleasant excitements either, because tarot and oracle cards are very reflective and they're super empathetic. And so however you go into the reading, they're really going to filter and flavor their answers to be as receptive to you as possible, because they really do like to speak on the level as to be heard and to what you want to hear. They want to please you, because they are helpful benevolent tools. And so they mirror the kind of energy that you come into it with. And unfortunately, also, if you do choose to come at tarot with a more dramatic flavor, or something where you're seeking answers over others in a restrictive, kind of confining way, or an infringing, gossiping kind of way, your cards are going to reflect that back at you too. And so if they think you want an answer that's full of drama, if they think you want an emotional response that's just as heightened as yours, they're always going to match it. And so it's really important to come into your readings and to your practice understanding that kind of energetic harmony, harmonic response, right, that cards really want to bring to the table. And again, I'll add another important layer to that, which is that when we're reading for others who are upset, or we're reading for others who are really craving answers, or they have a very heightened emotion, it's even more important that us as the readers, as the container for the reading, we really have a balanced, calm emotion, where we can be as subjective and offer as much clarity, because the cards are going to sense that other's emotional intensity. And so it can be a nice funnel and a very nice conductor of energy at the table and at the reading when our partner, or the person who's we're reading for, is very heightened. They can spark very great alchemy or energetic reflections back to the reading that can bring great clarity for us doing the reading, but only if we're in that space of openness to hear what the cards are really trying to bring in. But also that comes with time, that comes with practice. So when you're first learning to read, don't get too caught up in it. Learn the language first like a toddler, We don't go into teaching a baby to speak expecting them, to read Shakespeare at first. You learn a couple of words and you practice them and you hear them over weeks and months and days and years. You become a fluent speaker of a language. And coming to tarot or divination with that same openness and curiosity, like a child learns a language, is going to create such a better place of communion with yourself and your cards. So, yeah, I would say, I guess this is closing to number one about learning to speak the language of your cards. I mean, we could talk about this infinitely, and it is so unique and subjective to every person and deck. And I will go into more detail. I'm going to do a video about both of my decks, one Oracle, one Tarot, and just talk a bit about why I use one over the other and how I built my language with the two of them, so that hopefully that can give kind of a working example or a template for anyone who wants to create a better language with their cards. You can see how I build mine over time and how I troubleshoot and create more clarity and definitions and things in that video to come. So I hope you check that out if you're interested. The second thing that I'm going to talk about that it really flows through and comes from creating a great language with your cards. And specifically here, I will kind of deviate just into tarot specifically here. Understanding the setup of the cards and of the playing field is very important when we want to give good readings. This can be excuse me. It can be really overwhelming, honestly, at first. And so I just caution patience. I know it's difficult when you want to get answers, or you want to be connected, or you want to be able to be giving readings to people who and really making those connections in your readings. it really is a process that is a creation all of its own, like a work of art. You know, it takes time and coming back to with a new eye and um, refining and all these little intricacies that come with it. But and I'll say, even with Oracle decks, they do have their own particular setup. So gauging how they've been created and how they've been made, their overall look is very helpful. For tarot specifically, we have 4 suits which go through 0 to the king, and that is almost comparable and very excuse me, I'm so sorry. They're almost comparable to a regular playing set of deck of cards, and we can definitely lay the filters of tarot and numerology right over regular playing cards and read them. And cardomancy, tons of people do this, and I like to do it myself sometimes. But with tarot, I love the added minor and major arcana pieces. So when you play with a regular deck, you're missing the major arcana. And there's a lot of personal opinions about these different kinds of cards that are in a deck, where they came from in the history and all that. I'm not going to get like too in-depth in that. I really will one day do a large, in-depth look at differences between major and minor, because it's very interesting to me and to a lot of people who love tarot. But just for now and for beginners, since this video is very geared towards beginners, I just want to give you the structural setup so that you can start to work into your own understandings of these things. And when you can see the big picture, it becomes remembering card meanings or working through readings can become easier if you see the template that they grow through, because tarot really is all about this cycle, this progression, this beautiful evolution that takes place over all things, through archetypes, through beings, and just through life in general. You know, when we get into the numerology of it and growth patterns in mathematics, you know, the undeniable truths, right? So with that said, like I said, I don't want to get too deep into it, but what I'm going to say is that we have the major arcana, which is a set of cards that are all very powerful, life purpose, meaningful cards in their own. They are sort of like a theme inside of a story, whereas the minor arcana can be seen more like chapters throughout the story. Yes, they're very important and they're significant and sequential through the reading. The minor arcana, they read built upon each other, and but they're smaller in significance and in pinpointing aspects that are going to happen, versus the major arcana, which really creates a broad theme filter which casts itself over the minor arcana cards that might be around it. This also, keep in mind, it has to do with place settings and if you're using spreads or not, what kind of questions you've geared towards. But it's kind of a rule of thumb here that the major arcana either pop up at very important times of lives, or they create this filtered aspect which we read the minor arcana through in the reading. And the minor arcana follows a more numerological flow to it. However, the flow of growth is then filtered down through these 4 houses or suits that we have placements of, which, you know, also we have kind of some confusion with the verbiage going on with tarot sometimes. So we have the pentacles or coins, sometimes they're seen as. And then we have the wands or rods that are seen as sometimes. We have the sword, sometimes also read as the staff. And then, and there's some confusion as well because the rod can get confused with the staff. See, and this is what happens over time in history, changing of language, building of things, right? And finally, we have the cups. And so you see these 4 flavorings, which are also coincide with the 4 elements: water, fire, air, and earth. And then we have the ether, which is the container, which is can be seen as the major arcana, or sometimes I like to see it as the container, or the reader is the ether, the bringing together of all. And so, yeah, I also plan to share when I finish this completely, but I'll just give like a quick thing here, how you can see what I'm planning to show here, which is each of the placements in their seated in their houses, and how they sort of mold and grow off of each other in this cyclic fashion. Just for quick reference here, just so we all can be on the same page for an intro beginner, right? Because like I said, these are like learning words or the alphabet, right? You can create infinite stories, sentences, music, all types of things out of them. And so just understanding the basics here is where we start the foundation of building a language. And with that, I just want to touch basically on this idea here of what each house stands for, kind of. So we have the swords, which are in air, in my opinion, because also, you know, this is subjective, and there are others who shift the houses into different elements and things. But I see swords as air, the thought, the mind, our thinking, our words, our speech, and our intellect. Things that we use our logical mind for would all be categorized under this concept of the sword. Then the rods is fire to me, and it's passion. It's the gifts, the creation, the passions, and fueling the fire inside you, what gets your juices going, right? The magic, the spirit of life, the essence and power that creation comes through. That's kind of what the rods are speaking on when they come through. The pentacles or coins are seen as earth, material items, anything 3D, things you can really put a hand on, grasp in real life. And then we have the cups and water, and that's your emotions, your relationships, the fluidity of your life, how you flow between others, and what your vibration is kind of like. So when we pull the cards now, they follow a numerological pattern, growth pattern, through 0 through king, with the flavoring added of what house they're in. And so I'm not going to go through every number, only because the video will be like an hour long, and I do plan to give an actual in-depth card meanings video, but I will say that the flow is sequential and builds upon itself from 0 being, or ace, excuse me, because it's really called ace, the ace is in the deck, but it is seen as 0 or the fool. That's kind of like the initial infinity space where all possibilities are waiting to be picked from, right? And then 1 is like choosing that first idea, that first path, a new choice point or experience. Say for cups, it could be a new relationship, right? Because we're talking about cups are that emotional response, or new feelings. Swords would be like a new thought, a new idea. Rods would be something new that that really passions you, or a new way to get at a passion, or a new outlook or a new outlet that you've discovered. And then, like I say, for Earth, for Pentacles, like it would be a new thing that you're getting in your life, a new job, a new career, a new gift, a new haircut. You know, it would be something related to the self and the physical journey. And then 2 is like a choice point. You know, duality, which way you're going to choose. Will you continue to develop this certain idea that you've had number 1 on? Will you abandon it and go on to, you know, something new, right? And then 3 is like, okay, it's the creative process. I have chosen to follow through with my 0, 1, made it through 2. Now 3 is the building, the real creation part of creating in the 3. And then 4, we have, oh, it looks pretty stable. I have an idea of what I want here. But then we have 5 coming in as a disruptor, right? Chaos, a problem, a flat tire, you know, when you're rebuilding your house and you find out that you've got like a foundational crack or whatever. It's a real disruption to that foundation that you've built. And then you have the choice point. Am I going to persevere through? Am I going to fix the cracks in the foundation and start to build the house? Or is this 5 a real disruptor that's source telling me I've been on the wrong path the whole time? Because that happens as well. We get to choice point 2, we make the wrong choice. We force through 3. We really try to make things work and piece them together in that 3 phase that creates a false sense of a security for 4. And so when 5 comes in, it breaks up that false sense of security of 4 that you've wrongly created. And source brings you back to 0 again. Or 5 is there as a building point that helps you to secure, and you choose to fix that crack in your foundation, so to speak. For 6, you start to build, and this new building, the 3 turned to the 6 building aspect, comes now into a firm foundation of real creative process of creating the walls, and it has a real look to it. It has a real purpose to it. 6 is seen as the perseverance through 5, right? The coming to realizing the loops that have caught you into 5 and being able to ascend out of it and get higher, create more of a persevering stability, which leads to a 7, which is like that higher sight, that real expertise and wisdom that comes through experience, that has come through all these steps that we've been through already, right? And 7's super interesting too because it's educational and it's mind-based. And so when we see a 7 of all of these houses come through, it's very interesting because you know immediately that that person's at a different level of their building, their creative process. They've put a lot into whatever, you know, whether it's the 7 of Swords and it's a real kind of way they have of thinking, a construction of the mind and an ideology. This ideology is very strong if it's into the 7 already. You know, same things with the passions and the rods. You're more of you're mastering your craft by the time you're at the 7 of rods. You're in a working knowledge of things. You're not completed with anything yet, but you really have your feet into this. You're past intermediate now, you know. You've learned from all of the little bumps and things that beginners go through and into past intermediate. Or with the Pentacles of 7, you know, you've built up maybe a business and put a lot of work into it. Or maybe it's, you know, even say, go back to the house analogy, you've built up the house, right? The 7 comes to putting up the drywall, you know, all of the plumbing, the electrical's already done, the walls are shaped out, you've blueprinted where all your rooms are and everything. The 7 comes down to laying the drywall, choosing the flooring that you might want, right? Or the windows, the particular windows to see through, you know. Or the 7 of Cups is, you know, making it through a lot with somebody, or even in your own. It can be an individual thing where maybe you've been through a lot of bumps and bruises with relationships, and now you've kind of refined your relationship to yourself to understand like what's important to you, what your boundaries are, who you are as an individual. or maybe as your relationship, maybe you have a partner, you guys have been through a real lot together, got to know each other, and really now you're into a real solid working of a firm relationship with truth and honesty. um, yeah, and then and then we build further on to that even more, and we come into 8, 9, 10. 8, is a really beautiful karmatic number, and we see it in the shape of it as the infinity symbol in itself, right? The lemniscatic shape is just right in itself. When you see an 8 card, no matter what house it's in, we're facing karmatic, fate-driven sources now putting its piece into the creation. Because remember, when we're creating foundations, we're building up these things, it's not just us doing the work, us individually, our personality, our persona. We are God's source, and we're making these creations in partnership with source, or with the ether, or infinity, or imagination, whatever you choose to call these things. We are co-creating, and the 8 is source's chance to come in and really get its fingerprint in there. And it can be very interesting because we can fool ourselves right up until 8 with the egotistical mind. Because just like I was saying about the 5 comes in and it shakes things up, and it can make a lot of things that we thought were firm fall apart. Self and polarity in the universe is just so beautiful and so tricky that we really can imagine or trick ourselves into all the way through the 7 portion of creation, to where ego or self-service or something that's not completely aligned with our most best good can really come through fruition and manifestation through 7. But 8 comes in with source creation, with that karmatic undertone, just like a 5, and shakes things up. It puts its own working in there. And if it's meant to be, if it's a honest truth, if there's cyclic flow there, it's going to match, and it's going to make that beautiful 8, and it's going to flow beautifully. It's going to really be able to get to 9, which is our completion, which is realization of the complete cycle in the 9. But if it can't, if you fooled yourself this whole time, if you've really built that firm foundation on the shoreline, so to speak, this is the coming in of the tide, right? This is when, maybe you built a beautiful home on the beach, but you never took into account that the tides come in and out. That in the winter, the tides are generally higher than in the summer. And so maybe that house that you thought you measured out that the high tide would never reach, well, you forgot to gauge only during this time of the year, the moon is this way, and oh, no, it rises and your house is underwater. That is the 8. And like I said, it can also be a beautiful matching and a harmonious thing where it just brings in your whole project, and you finally get that, wow, it works. And then after you get that, wow, it works, you get to step up into 9, which is watching the full cycle, seeing it for what it is, enjoying it, understanding it, loving it for what it is. 9 is beautiful as completion as well, because we're so close to the veil. We're on that threshold of like, what's next? And you're getting a good peek at what's next. 7 builds, and 7 is a rope down where you can begin to see that, oh my goodness, I've been building this whole thing here, and yes, this is wonderful and it is beautiful, but there's other things out there, right? 7 is such like a mystic, hermit, sort of Merlin kind of magical sense of all-knowingness, spiritual sense coming into us of higher sight that gives us clarity as well. And so when we get to the 9, it's a fuller appreciation of that because it's worked and because it was the right thing. It was harmonious with your alignment. And just like in life, 9s are very connected to spirit world. They see that veil. They see what's coming next. very clearly. You know, they're ready to go almost, because the 9 is like, oh yes, this is wonderful, this completion, but look at what's next. And what's next is our 10, which in standard numerology, you know, we would use a 10 to reduce back down to the new idea, right? The 1 and the 0 brings us back to that space, that 0 of total possibility, but also with the new idea set in. Because usually when we're coming from 9 to a new cycle, we've seen the new cycle that's there for us already. You know, we've seen the new world, we've seen the next crossing. We know we have a next thing to do. In tarot specifically, we don't have a 10, right? The 9 graduates into, excuse me, it grows into the Knight instead. But the Knight is the same thing. It's that new venture. It's knowing you have something to go out for. It's the new prospect of going out somewhere, right? And it's, again, flavored to what house it sits in. It's interesting when we get into these cards as well, because when we get into the face value cards, right, they can portray real people in our lives as well. And so this is also another place where learning the fluidity of the language and learning how readings progress can be really important, because you have to subjectively read the undertones to see, are cards trying to tell us this person right here, or are they trying to say to us the underlying meaning? Or are they trying to say a little bit of both, which, you know, can totally be the case as well. So never feel tightened down to say that this has to be, you know, a man with dark eyes and dark hair who's malicious behind your back, you know, because we're seeing, you know, like the Knight of Swords or something, you know. But again, feel free to stick by those if that's what resonates with you as well. I'm not telling anybody, you know, how they have to say their card meanings. But find comfortability and support in knowing that you can find workings for your own meanings in themselves, you know. It's totally fine. I have pages and pages and notes over years in journals of how my card meanings have developed over time and changed, you know, because it's important. Oh, I'm losing power. And I just messed that up too, because I'm talking about pages, not nights. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. And I have no editing on this video either. So in honesty and in, you know, hey, accidents happen, right? But yes, so excuse me. I'm speaking about the 10 as pages, not the nights. Pages, and that is the new path. That is the new idea. That is the new sight that you're having. The glimpse of something new out there that you'll graduate from with the 9 into the 10, which is pages. And 11, what we see as 11 is the Knight. The Knight is similar though, but the Knight is the action point of going out to make that choice point. It is walking through the doorway. And that's another reason why I like to see Knights as an 11, because we see the doorway. And so it's a great reminder, a little cue. Oh, right, this is the action point of the doing. So I'm literally going to be stepping out into new working relationships. If it's, you know, the Cups that's coming through, I'm definitely going to be putting, maybe it's a marriage, or taking a next step in a relationship. Maybe it's like your kid's going off to college or something pretty dramatic, as in like a next step. Or if it's, you know, Knight with Pentacles, then you know you have like a great new venture opportunity coming up to you, or a great new project that's going to be happening that you're going to need to go out and get. And then we move into Queens, and again, like, this can be seen as a person. Oh, and just to reiterate, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, kind of skipped over that, but the pages are sort of seen as a woman figure generally, or a more feminine aspected tone to a person. And then we have the knights, which are more of the male aspected or a man figure. And now we have the queens, which is more of the female again. And the queen's message is honestly one of patience and having foresight and temperance, a working knowledge of knowing when is right. That sort of feminine flow of seeing where you get in and how others, where others really need things. Because if we tap into that queen vibe, the mother vibe, because the queen's more, again, more of a mature woman vibe, the mother vibe. Whereas a page, you see more of like the younger woman vibe, the maiden sort of vibe. But the queen brings in more of like that, queen or the crone or the mother figure sort of patience, seeing everybody for what they are, seeing what they're good at, and playing to their attributes because out of a generous love for them too. Mothers really do that out of nurturing love space, right? So the queen's message is really one of that, a really mothering guidance, a patience sort of tone to it. And then we lay that tone or that message of patience over the houses or the suit that the card that she's sitting in. Again, like I said, you play to the reading as well because maybe it really is pointing towards a figure of a woman. And then we can get into those more definitive reasons when I get into actual card meanings. But here's just the overall flavoring. It's a general key word understanding to give you a vision of each type of card so that when you get to reading, you're not going to be flipping through the book looking, oh, what's the book's exact wording? I have to have the right sentence that they have here to display these words right to the other person because that's what the meaning is. But tarot, when you can step into a space of comfortability with divination, and especially, again, that's why I love to call it spiritual divination, because we really have this inner cord, a guiding rope that if we connect up to source with, it really provides great understandings where all you need is the frameworking of how the cards sit together, and then you build your information and you build your language in between it. Just like all we need is key words to teach a toddler to get to understand what they want to relay, right? But as we get older and we work through language more, we work our communication better, we can really get into some descriptive meanings and really speak eloquently and describe things with more depth. But that comes with practice only, right? So patience. And again, Queen, it is patience, right? And the final card which we see in our minor arcana is the King. And the King is kind of like the ultimate patriarchy figure, obviously, but the message behind it is really one of knowledge. It is the wisdom, the mastery, the final overseer of things. And so when we see a king come through in any of these houses, it really can be a great working point for us to understand the people that we're dealing with in the reading. This is somebody who has worked very hard to build a working understanding and has a great wisdom about them in a certain aspect depending on the house that it's sitting in. Now, this is also another issue where we'll get to when we talk about card meanings, which is things like reversals. And some people don't read reversals. I personally do read reversals. And I absolutely love seeing reversed kings because it is such a hard point of shadow work needed to be done that it's like a challenge, and I love a challenge. And I think shadow work for each of us is like our basic soul purpose, our foundational soul purpose for each and every individual is a level of shadow work. Yes, it's individual to each of us. Our lessons and our flavorings are so unique and ever changing, but that general basis is hey, do your shadow work. Go look at your triggers, your little rough spots inside of you, and go figure out why they're there, and when we see a reversed king, we know there really, really is a lot of buffering that needs to be done for someone. Depending on the card placements, maybe they're talking about the person you're reading for. Maybe they're talking about somebody in their life. Maybe it's not the specific of a person, but a really traumatic experience related to maybe the house that it's sitting in, to something that they have a lot of refining to do. However, and this is always important when we see reverse kings, I love to do this to people because when we have kind of hard information, it's so important to offer it on a plate of, look at the amazing potential you have. Yes, it has a lot of weeding to be done, but you have an acre of fertile soil here, right? Remind them of the undertone of possibilities, and the fact that they have a king showing up at all means they have such a heightened, huge potential in whatever area it is for mastery, for great influence over others, to be a real beacon in a social community of some sort, like a patriarchal sort of family unit, how the father is that overseer, that great protector, without, let's not even get into all the negativity and all the toxic masculinity, all that, I'm talking about our genuine, honest, organic, divine masculine sort of thing here, and an upright king. And it's important when we see reversals to remind people that reversal is a message from source that, hey, look at your potential you're not using. Look at all these things that you have going for you that you're purposely discognitive on, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk way more about reversals in that another video, because I'm already almost an hour long. I've got to cut this out. And I wanted to close up on the last couple of notes here I had. So yeah, get too caught up in card meanings. But just understand that there's the minor arcana, which have this numerological flow, the suit sort of flow. And it's very common, and it's very much like working the letters of a language into building sentences. And then when we have the major arcana, that's more of like a theme. That's more of a general overtone that we're going to lay over a reading, or is the answer to the question. And you have to kind of play around with what they're saying, what kind of cards are appearing, to understand whether, they're offering an answer or they're describing more about the problem, Number 3, and this leads into it, is the spreads idea and working with spreads. I'm going to do a whole video on the spreads that I work with, I've developed, I use, and talk about each one of them in depth. But for now, I just want to say that for beginners, spreads are totally up to you. Some people don't use spreads and some people do. Some people love to just talk and flip cards. Some people like to have a question and then flip a bunch of cards on one question. Some people, like to ask a question and flip the cards till they get the answer they want. It's a tool. Feel free to use it however that you want. In my personal opinion, I have spiritual overlay, and that creates an understanding that respect and honor is needed when we're interacting with our cards, and that we're creating this energetic space of communion and going to them for a reason. I personally don't ever ask my cards random questions about the day or the week or the world, and I don't ever do readings where I continually ask more questions and more questions. I like to go into a reading with a purpose and have a question and choose a spread that delineates the best possibilities to get the most clear reading based on kind of what I'm asking for. To me, it's a helpful approach, and it's a nice approach for the cards, because I love to see my cards as an entity of their own, and I respect their boundaries, their time, their energy, their messages, most importantly. I always create a space before going into a reading. I always thank my cards after a reading. I never overuse my cards, and Of course, especially when I do readings for others too, and we go into it with a question, if there is confusion, I will always offer clarity questions at the end. And I do kind of do a random, reading at the end for clarifications, depending on what kind of things we need to ask. I wouldn't do a secondary spread to ask for clarifications, in my personal opinion. But also, when you're asking for clarification, it's so important to listen to the cards and to know when they've said their piece, because they will just repeat back to you the same thing if you keep asking them. They get very tired of not being listened to, just like you would, or just like a toddler would, when they're saying I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry over and over again. We get very tired of hearing that, right? So yeah, working with spreads can help sort of create a container better, and can keep your cards from feeling overused or misused or abused, But that's another thing that goes into more about spiritual divination. If you are interested in that, I've got some videos already on that. I'll continue to do videos on that because that's my style. But just to keep it short and wrap up, I just want to introduce for beginners. There's a million spreads out there, so you can check them out. Classic ones are past, present, future, a full year spread, which like a card would be for each month. There's also like the Celtic Cross, which is pretty famous. But yeah, you can check out them. Feel free to try them out, see what works for you. I do that. I find some, I work them. If I don't like them, I never use them again. I tweak them. I change card placement meanings if needed, over time even. But I'll talk about that more when I go over my own personal card meanings. Lastly, I really wanted to just close up quickly here with how we integrate all of these skills into creating a great reading. So sometimes as a reader, depending on how you come at your cards, you can almost take over a reading and think you either go into it thinking you know how it's going to be, or maybe you do get impulses and information from your cards and from source beforehand. So you have this preconceived energetic idea of how the reading's going to go before you even start. And that can be helpful or hurtful. And balancing, I think, is key here. It's also key to create this common space of understanding with whoever you're doing the reading with. So be honest about your personal approach with whoever you're doing the reading with. And try to get clarification from them about what they're really seeking in their readings. And if it's something that aligns with you, that you can offer. Because sometimes people come seeking things that don't align with me, and I have to say, that alignment of questioning doesn't resonate well with me, And sometimes I offer them other people that I know who do readings or who do work in a certain way that might be more comfortable for them, because really it is about a service to others, in my opinion. And so we want to be working with cards and decks that work with that person that we're trying to help, right? We really want to hear their questioning for what it is. Maybe they're asking, oh, I want to know, does this guy really love me? Or is this relationship I'm in a new relationship going to work out? And I mean, as a reader, you could just go start flipping cards and maybe you'll get some confirmation that makes them feel good. Maybe the cards will be like, yeah, it's great. Or maybe they'll be trying to tell you, hey, you're making a mistake here. But instead, if you stop and look at that person and say, yeah, okay, we can definitely focus your reading around that, but what inside you is really the cause of asking that question? Is it fearful, like that you're going to be alone? Or do you have some really strong feelings for this person and it's a rejection kind of thing? Or do you not have really good feelings about this person? You're questioning and you want to know what their intentions are. Getting at the deeper issue about the very shallow material questions can bring a reading that just feels much better. It feels more honest, it feels more connected, and that person is going to get more clear answers, which is really what we should be working at when we're offering readings, right? We don't want to be offering readings just to tell them what we think they want to hear, or hoping to not see the Tower at all, or God forbid we have the Five of Pentacles pop up when they're asking about a life path or something, or the Three of Swords comes in and they have a relationship question. And it's, if you structure your readings and you have a very staked in perception, then creating fluid readings that are helpful to others becomes difficult, honestly, because you are not creating space for the cards to speak to that individual. You're saying, oh no, this card means this, so that's what they're saying when they say this, but the word beautiful, right, can mean so many different things. We say a beautiful flower. That gives us a picture, an idea of one thing. We say a beautiful blade of grass. That gives us a different picture. You say, a beautiful human being, and that gives everybody totally different pictures, right? A beautiful piece of music gives everything a different flavoring. So when you see that card that means beautiful, remember that it's your own working in the intricacies of what the cards are trying to play through and point out that is important. So this is why, again, spreads can be helpful, because you have that preliminary first other card that's come before, or the cards that are coming after, to give us more tone, to give us a placement, to basically, it's similar to when you don't know what a word means inside of a sentence and you kind of use those other words as signifiers to fill in what that word could mean, right? That's kind of when we can use the cards as more of a placeholder like that and discover inside them what the meaning means to the person, to the spread, to the energetic feel that's happening at that present moment. It can be way more personal and just such more beneficial readings that people are going to want to actually be a part of, and you're going to want to keep wanting to do too. They're not going to be draining, because a lot of times, and beginners especially, or people who haven't found their kind of niche and their flow in their practice, they start to be overwhelmed by it or pushed down, felt really boxed in, because they feel like they have to learn it this way, they have to do spreads this way, or they're getting all these things, these very repetitive things back, and they're like, or contradictory readings back too, and they're like, this doesn't make any sense, and you really give up on it. But it's because you haven't worked in that communication yet, and you're not allowing for that fluid, different accent, different tone, different way to say, same thing. Last thing I'll put in as another little metaphor to that, the word beautiful said with different accents, different accentuation, right? I feel like that's the wrong word. But anyways, you can say it with inflections. You can say it with a sarcastic tone. You can say it with a loving tone. You can say it with a romantic tone. So the cards can have all of those type of tones. So it's important to just keep that in mind and allow for that working to come in over time for you. So I hope this beginner's video, it's been an hour. If you stuck through it, thank you so much. I guess you really want to learn about tarot. Awesome. Take a look at some of the other videos I did. If you're interested in getting a reading, I have a whole breakdown of my spreads and more about reading over at amariespeaks.com/readings. You can check me out there. I'm on Etsy, Spiritual Divination. Or you can follow me on Telegram. I don't do spiritual divination over there, really. Mostly I kind of just do self-love, positivity, things to do shadow work and that kind of thing over there. But that's t.me at amariespeaks. So find me over there. And like I said, I am going to do some future videos, more in-depth card meanings specifically, and then also like a card spreads kind of thing. So I hope you'll tune in. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have certain things that you want to share about the ways that your practice is growing or whatever, I'd love comments, so leave them below. And again, thank you so much for joining me watching my video. Have a great day.